Fluid intelligence represents the brain's raw capacity for abstract reasoning. It is the baseline ability to recognize patterns and solve novel problems without relying on previously acquired knowledge. Historically, psychometrics treated this capacity as a fixed trait. The prevailing consensus was that general cognitive ability plateaus by mid-adolescence, reaching a level of crystallization that remains largely stagnant throughout adulthood. This assumption shaped the traditional model of knowledge generalization. In this framework, education focuses on teaching specific procedures or facts, with the hope that students can apply those exact tools to similar problems later. If fluid intelligence is neurologically locked by the teenage years, then schools are limited to installing specific software. They can never actually upgrade the underlying hardware of the brain. In 2008, a study by Suzanne Yagi disrupted this dogma. Researchers recruited young adults for 20 hours of intense, adaptive cognitive training to see if that hardware could, in fact, be modified. The subjects used an adaptive dual N-back task. This requires a person to simultaneously monitor a visual stream of locations on a grid and an auditory stream of spoken letters, identifying when a current stimulus matches one presented N steps earlier. The task is designed to be relentlessly difficult. As a participant's proficiency improves, the system automatically scales the difficulty, pushing the requirements from a 2-back to a 3-back or 4-back match. After 20 hours of training, the participants showed massive improvement on the N-back task itself. However, they also showed significant performance gains on Raven's progressive matrices, a completely different assessment of general fluid intelligence. Raven's matrices share zero procedural or content similarity with the memory-based N-back task. They are abstract, geometric puzzles designed to measure raw reasoning, not letter or location recall. This transfer of skill across two dissimilar tasks proved the existence of process generalization. The training had successfully upgraded the brain's general-purpose cognitive architecture. To understand why a memory exercise improves abstract reasoning, we have to view working memory as an active workspace. It is the dynamic staging ground where information is processed in real time. Researcher Nelson Cowan describes this system using a 2-tier model. A small, capacity-limited zone called the focus of attention sits atop a much larger field of activated long-term memory. Because the focus of attention can only hold a few items at once, the brain must perform a constant process of updating. It monitors incoming data and forcefully ejects older information to make room for what is relevant. This relies on inhibition, the deliberate suppression of dominant or distracting responses that threaten to clutter the active workspace. The dual N-back task targets these specific mechanics. It forces the user to constantly update their internal list while inhibiting the urge to respond to lures from previous, now irrelevant rounds. The exercise isn't a test of memory volume. It is a high-intensity stressor for the brain's executive control and attentional regulation systems. Moving from the cognitive model to the physical hardware, we can localize these processes to specific cortical geography. The parietal region, specifically the intraparietal sulcus, or IPS, handles the storage and processing of spatial information. Attentional control and updating are managed by the prefrontal region, specifically the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, or DLPFC. Communication between these two distant hubs occurs across white matter tracts, the physical wiring that integrates the front and back of the brain. To alter this network, the brain requires a specific environmental trigger, known as a supply mismatch. Every individual has a functional limit to their cognitive flexibility, the amount of neural resources they can deploy to solve a task. Functional neural capacity only expands when a task's demands continuously exceed that flexibility, forcing the brain to physically adapt its resource supply. Neuroimaging studies by Olesen have captured this adaptation in real time, showing increased activity in the prefrontal and parietal cortices following 5 weeks of training. Diffusion tensor imaging by Takechi confirms that this training actually increases the physical density of the white matter tracts connecting these hubs, improving signal integrity. Dysstructural remodeling is regulated at the cellular level by the dopaminergic system, which governs working memory efficiency. Researcher Fiona McNabb found that intensive training leads to a decrease in D1 receptor binding potential in the prefrontal cortex, a change that correlates directly with behavioral gains in working memory. This decrease indicates a shift toward a more efficient cellular architecture. The brain has streamlined its receptor interactions to achieve higher performance with less chemical effort. This plasticity is particularly potent during the specific neurodevelopmental window of adolescence. While gray matter density stabilizes early, myelination of white matter tracts, insulating the brain's wires, continues throughout the teenage years and into the 20s. Because this wiring is still maturing, adolescence is an optimized biological window for structural frontoparietal upgrades. This biological maturing explains the Jaggi paradox. The reason an N-back exercise improves Raven's matrices scores is that the two tasks are not actually unrelated. Despite their visual differences, both tasks tax the exact same frontoparietal architecture. Strengthening that underlying hardware via one exercise expands the brain's capacity for all complex thought. This mechanism of process generalization provides a powerful tool for clinical intervention. Researcher Elise Temple used similar phonological training to treat developmental dyslexia. The training structurally normalized activity in the left inferior frontal gyrus, leading to measurable improvements in oral language and reading performance. In children with ADHD, Torkel Klingberg found that intensive working memory training structurally reduced inattentive behavior, with benefits that persisted months after the intervention. In each case, targeted cognitive stress fortifies the universal neurological systems that underpin general intelligence. Standard educational interventions remain centered on the delivery of information. They rely on static environments that prioritize knowledge generalization over neural adaptation. Forcing structural change requires the supply mismatch trigger. The task must adapt in real time to continuously challenge the brain's functional limits. Traditional curricula focus on what the mind contains. Targeted cognitive training focuses on what the mind can do, improving the executive processes that regulate human cognition. The goal of cognitive intervention is the expansion of the brain's physical architecture. By building more robust frontoparietal connections, we can permanently increase the overall structural bandwidth of the adolescent mind.